Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us in this session today. My name is Scott Forrester. I'm one of the Customer Success Directors at Bizagi. And joining me today for a chat is Ian McLeod from Insight. Ian, would you like to give us a little bit of your background, who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about Insight?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Ian McLeod. I'm the Head of Process Engineering at Insight Investment. I joined Insight back in September 2018. Before coming to Insight, I worked in investment banking, and before that, I worked for a consulting company. Just to say a little bit about Insight, we're a global asset manager. We're an award-winning global asset manager. We're part of the Bank of New York Mellon Group. And to just quickly run through our history, we've been growing consistently pretty much since 2002, both in terms of headcount. We're currently around 1,000 people strong, but also in terms of the value of the assets that we manage. So measured at the middle of this year, we were managing assets to the value of something like £740 billion. So that gives a view of our scale. And just to talk about our business model a little bit, what we do is provide really highly tailored solutions to meet particular investment challenges that our clients have. And our clients will be pension funds, insurers, and other large institutional clients. And we obviously do a lot of things for those clients, but I guess what we're particularly well known for is liability-driven investing, which is where we develop a tailored solution to really manage the uncertainty around our clients' liabilities. And if you're a pension plan manager, that's really important. You want to manage your liabilities. So hopefully that gives you a flavor of the kind of thing we do, Scott.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it certainly sounds like there are very high expectations from your customers on your company. What were the challenges at Insight Investment that led you to actually having a look for some kind of platform and eventually choosing Bizagi?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think they're really just the challenges you'd expect when you grow. I mean, when you're a very small company, you can do things much more easily, and that's the reality. You can be very nimble. You can kind of turn on a dime. As you get bigger, that becomes more difficult. And since we've been growing consistently, we really needed to look at automation tools to help us. And I think if I was going to put a headline on it, it would be, how could we continue growing successfully, but in a safe and sustainable way, while preserving that agility to enable us to carry on innovating successfully? And I think it really breaks down into a number of facets. There are a number of things that we needed to achieve that Bizagi could help with. First, it's that recognition that we're a solution-oriented company. And what I mean by that is we develop very tailored solutions for our clients. So that mantra in process improvement of simplifying and standardizing, it's not that easy. So we needed
more bespoke.
Yeah, exactly. We needed a solution that would recognize there is a high degree of variability in our processes, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Because we've been growing, we've got a lot of new staff that need to be guided safely through our processes. We needed a solution that would enable us to adapt those processes very easily and visualize how much work we have in progress, so we could manage our processes more effectively. And finally, we needed to be able to get empirical data about our processes to feed back into process improvement. I mean, in my experience, so often what holds the process improvement project back is just that lack of empirical data. And if you don't have that, you're in the realm of decision-making by hippos. I don't know if you've heard that expression before, hippos, the highest paid person's opinion. Well, you don't want your process improvement to be led by hippos. So yeah, we needed a tool that would help us with all of those things.
Okay. That sounds like a really sort of complex and mammoth task to kind of wrap your head around. So what did you do to approach this?
Yeah, I'm sorry if I make it sound too complex. So I mean, when I joined back in September 2018, it was really just myself and one other colleague. And I suppose it took a few months to really get our head around Insight, understand where its particular strengths were and where the opportunities might be to make things better. And I mean, in summary, we could see that the company was doing an awful lot of things correctly, but what we could probably do a better job of, honestly, is thinking about the end-to-end processes as they cross departmental boundaries, and think about a way of defining those processes and supporting them through automation in a better way. So we put a case together for a centre of excellence, and the centre of excellence from the outset was really meant to have 3 responsibilities. So the first was process discovery and improvement. And if we think about it, staff obviously know what their job is, but they can lack that contextual understanding of what happens upstream and what happens downstream from the particular work they do. And you know, if you can't articulate the whole process and you can't see the eventual outcome of the process, it's very hard to make process improvement. And you actually run the risk that if you do make a localized improvement, you make the overall outcome of the process worse. So it was very important that we had to focus on process discovery and improvement. The second area is obviously automation, workflow, business process management, whatever you call it. I mean, Insight has always had a very strong risk and control framework. We pride ourselves on it, but if I had to be critical at all, it would be just that those controls were defined at a departmental level. And when you consider an end-to-end business process, it's essential that you think about the joins between departments where work gets handed off from one group to the next. So we needed to do something about that. And then the final responsibility area is process analytics. There's a tremendous amount of information within Bizagi or you know, any tool that we chose to use. And it's really important to be able to visualize that, to start mining it, to get value out of it, to feed that back in. So we saw those 3 areas as being mutually complementary and within the scope of our Centre of Excellence.
Okay. I'd really like to hear a little bit more about this Centre of Excellence. How did you, I mean, what was the thought behind it? How did you go about setting it up? What were the steps you took, and what does it look like?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I can talk a little bit about how we're organised and then how we actually go about doing our work. Yeah. For sure. So, as you'd expect from the name, being a centre of excellence, we're a central group supporting the entire company. So we have a global remit, but we're actually spread across 2 locations. So some of the team is in London, and I also have part of the team in Pune in India. So in London, I have 4 people, well, 5 including myself. I have 2 people that come from a traditional Lean and Six Sigma background, and they really lead my process discovery and improvement efforts. They're sort of like my shock troops, Scott. So they'll be first into an area. They will convene the workshops, get all the stakeholders together, understand that full end-to-end process, make improvement recommendations, streamlining recommendations. Where it makes sense to automate, what they will then do is hand over to another 2 people I have in London that I call my Bizagi design leads. Now, these people were hired off the street with Bizagi skills, and it was really important to us to be self-sufficient. We didn't want to be dependent on a professional services firm, but we wanted to hit the ground running. So we hired a couple of experienced people, and they're very competent Bizagi developers, but I would say their main strength is being able to engage with business users and really understand their pain points and the outcomes they're trying to achieve, and turn that into a design for a Bizagi application. And then
it's very much not just about copying what's there or discovering what's there, but actually looking for opportunities to improve and to fix as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just not forgetting the Pune team that we had. So in order to give us more development bandwidth and also some resilience as well, we've been staffing up a team in Pune, and we now have 6 people in India. Okay. And if I think about that team, a couple of people came in with a little bit of Bizagi experience, but most of the team had no prior Bizagi experience. So it's really been a case of going through the online training and coaching by the team in London. Mm-hmm. But now, if I look across the group, we all have that solid foundation in Bizagi low-code development. But there are 3 supplemental areas that we're developing skills in. The first is business intelligence, or Tableau really, because Tableau is our corporate tool. And that's so that we can unlock the value in the Bizagi data. The second area doesn't have a very good name, but we just call it technical, which means that traditional, Visual Studio type development, specifically with Node.js. And we need that to really work on our custom integrations. And then the third area, this is the newest, where we're just dipping our toes. This is robotics. And it's because our direction of travel is absolutely to think about doing robotic extensions to our workflow applications to start to really address the residual inefficiencies that exist. So our vision for the team is that we're going to try and be in fact, we already are, have minimal dependencies on other technical teams within Insight, and that allows us to move more quickly, and we ultimately want to be completely cross-trained so that the team can be very, very fungible, so we can change our shape and shift our effort where it's needed, whether that's a particular Bizagi development or some Tableau development or working on a custom component or integration. And in terms of how we work, it's probably no surprise we broadly follow a kind of Scrum agile method. So we do a lot of work on our backlog, putting stories onto there that we elaborate and groom. And then we plan our work in 2-week sprints. And within that Scrum framework, my role is really product owner. So it's my job to try and maximize the value from the product, which, and when I say product, I obviously mean Bizagi, but it will also include all those other potential tools that we will later integrate under that overall umbrella of intelligent process automation. So it will include robotics, possibly machine learning, some more intelligent document processing, but there's a time and place, and that stuff will come in a little bit later. So just saying a little bit more about how we work, as much as possible, we try to prioritize our new applications objectively. So we use something called a value scorecard, which is a way of estimating potential benefits from an application along a number of dimensions. So things like revenue generation or brand improvement or risk reduction. We try to get an objective score, but it's not always possible. So one of the things we've set up is essentially a committee that we call our governance forum. So this is a committee comprising reasonably senior people drawn from across the firm, and they sort of act as a sounding board for me. They will validate my prioritization recommendations and sometimes get a second opinion, which is really useful. And in terms of our development, I suppose our guiding philosophy, if you like, is that we try to get into production as quickly as we possibly can. And it's because we honestly believe that it's only at the point when an application's in production that you actually start getting really valuable feedback about that application. So it sounds
in reality as opposed to what the plan was.
Yeah, and in fact, I'm sure you know, there is a very real risk that if you spend too long designing something based on people's intuitions about what they think might be valuable, you run the risk that you make that application more complex than it actually needs to be, which is counterproductive.
Almost
so we try to avoid that. I've mentioned it before. We don't actually talk about Bizagi internally. We've branded the Bizagi system Ava or Eva. And it is a little bit corny. I always have a kind of, I can't keep a smile off my face, but that name is short for evolutionary automation. And there's a serious message there. So the idea is we get something very simple into production, then we gather real feedback on what would genuinely be useful. And then we incrementally make enhancements to that application. And what we're doing is getting it better and better fitted to a particular business requirement that users may, well, probably don't really know themselves at the outset. And it's only once they start using something in anger that they can work that out. So yeah, hopefully that gives it a feel for what our approach is for developing new things and also enhancing our applications.
Yeah, thank you. That's actually very useful. It sounds to me like it's a really well sort of thought through strategy, and that you've sort of learned your lessons as you go along the way. What are the benefits? I mean, obviously they're probably incremental as you've learned and as you've adapted and as you've thought through what you needed to do. What are the kinds of benefits that the Center of Excellence has given to your business?
Yeah, I mean, if I think objectively about what I was going to say we've been running for 2 years. It's not quite true. We've not been running at full strength for 2 years, but near enough. I mean, in that time, we've developed a few custom integrations that are adding a lot of value. So just to run through those very quickly, every day we synchronize with our Salesforce systems. So all of the Bizagi applications we've developed have access to our up-to-date customer information. Overnight, we synchronize with Azure AD, and that's not just to synchronize the user populations. What we do is we allocate roles to staff based on membership of Active Directory groups. And it was really important to do that because Insight's entire security model, permissioning model, is based on membership of AD groups. So we wanted to make sure that Bizagi was also integrated with that. And the final custom integration we've done is with the Symphony messaging system. I don't know if you're familiar with Symphony. It's a lot like Slack, but used in the financial services community.
I think we've had a couple of conversations about this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's really gaining ground because frankly, it's an alternative to the Bloomberg messaging system. So there are some cost advantages to the banks and asset managers that use it. And a lot of our front office community prefer to receive a notification message via Symphony rather than an email notification. But if I think about the applications we've developed, and we've delivered 20 full-fledged applications now to production, all of those applications are common in that what they're doing is knitting together sideways our company, because we have a very well-defined departmental structure. And now we have application support for the business processes that run sideways. And a lot of our applications will maybe begin in the client servicing department. They'll pass through a front office area, then various operational areas, perhaps finance or compliance or legal. So it's that sideways integration and giving us a higher degree of operational control, because it's specifically looking at the joins between departments and ensuring that there's integrity along the end-to-end process chain.
Makes sense. Are you able to expand on that? Can you give us an example of one of these applications that you've worked on?
Yes, I mean we have several applications that would fit that bill, such as OTC clearing, CSA amendments. But I think that the one I always come back to is client mandate change, and probably because it was one of our first applications. And if I'm brutally honest, probably a little bit more ambitious than we should have taken on right at the beginning of our journey. But it's a success story now. It probably helps if I take a step back and just give a little bit of the business background around this process. So. All of the investment management that we perform for clients is governed by a legal agreement with the client, sets out the rules, what we can do. And periodically, clients will want to change some aspect of the way we do investment management. Well, that kicks off a pretty complex process. So first, we need to register that request to change. Then we need to have a specialist solution designer needs to interpret what does the client want to achieve here and do a first draft of the legal language to cover that. And then the solution designer will want to get input from other people within the firm. So maybe the way we manage our performance needs to be modified. Perhaps we'll need a new financial benchmark, or possibly the way we invoice our clients will need to be changed. So all of that input needs to be gathered. And then once you've got that draft document reflecting that, the portfolio manager will need to review that and come to a decision whether she is able to still manage the portfolio under those new constraints. Once she's happy, that's when legal get involved to do the final drafting, negotiation and execution of the new contract with the client. And once that's done, that's when the real work begins, because then all of the departments within Insight that are affected by that change need to go and implement those changes. Now, the complexity of a client change can actually be multiplied considerably if it affects multiple portfolios, because each of those portfolios will be managed by a different business area. And when we did our initial process discovery work, we concluded that for any client change, upwards of 20 different teams could be involved in that.
That's a lot of teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And the challenge is that all of this coordination between these different teams relies upon experts in our client service department with a deep level of institutional knowledge. And as the firm has been growing and we've had new people come into the organization, they don't necessarily have the same depth in history in the company and institutional knowledge. And volumes have been increasing as well. So we needed a way of safely guiding us through a quite complex process. So we've developed a workflow application, and there's a lot of detail I could go to, but you can imagine what we essentially do is gather a lot of information in the early stage of the workflow that the workflow system then uses to ensure that the appropriate groups are brought in to that process in the correct order. But even so, some client changes are so complex that you can't predetermine exactly what sequence they need to go in. So we're quite proud of a little bit of functionality we've provided. We call it, again, doesn't have a great name, we call it ping pong functionality after table tennis. But because what it enables someone to do is essentially forward the case to anyone else in the company. They don't have to have a predefined role in the application. We can just forward it anywhere. That person can provide input and then send it back, and then it can be forwarded on to anyone else. So effectively what we've done with this application is take a structured process, but in the middle, we've allowed for unstructured processing. So we've effectively given people all of the flexibility that they'd have with email, but clearly we have a full audit trail around each case within the application. So yeah, the primary benefit we've got from doing that is guiding staff through the process in that safe way to minimize risk. But we wanted to do more than that, Scott. So, and this is where Tableau comes in. We wanted to enable our staff to get a much better handle on what is the status of all of these cases. Where are they? Where are their potential blockers that are delaying progress? So we put a Tableau dashboard together, and I'm going to try and paint this dashboard with words. I don't know how successfully this will be, but if you can visualize a stacked bar chart where the individual bars represent changes going on for each client. So the clients are the individual bars, and the colors of the bars represent the different statuses that the cases could be in. So that was the top half of the dashboard. The bottom half of the dashboard was some key information about each case, and the case ID was actually a hot link that would take you into the summary form in the Bizagi system. So quite a nice integration between Tableau and Bizagi, so you could use both side by side. We presented this to our stakeholders, and it was received really well, but we could tell it wasn't quite hitting the nail on the head. It wasn't quite delivering exactly what they wanted. And the reason is that the information we could get hold of through the Tableau connector, it was sort of backwards looking. We could see who had completed each task. What we couldn't see was who currently has each activity.
Right.
And so what we did with, and you know the history of this, with your help, we've added the operational data store, so ODS, and developed a query against ODS, which now does get hold of this information, which we now pull into the dashboard. So now what the dashboard lets you see, the same information, same graphical information, but in the table below, we can see every single task that is open and who the member of staff is that it's sitting with and how long they've had it. And where it hasn't yet been picked up by someone, we have all the members of the role that could pick up that task. So now it's turned the dashboard into something that is a much better tool for actively managing the process. And the real benefit,
it's not just about what happened, but what's happening right now.
Absolutely. And when you can have that bird's eye view of what's happening right now, how many tasks are open, who are they sitting with, how long have they had them with? Well, the real benefit of that is that you can manage more client changes. You obviously manage them reliably, but you can manage them more quickly because you can see every time a task is sitting with someone and it's been sitting with them for a couple of days without action. And that's all with managed, if you like, by the central client service team, but it no longer requires that deep level of institutional knowledge that you only get when you've been working in the firm for many years. So that's,
and I should imagine a lot of running around and asking questions and waiting for answers.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can. So, in fact, I don't believe Insight is unique to this. In many companies, you have entire people's roles consist of sending emails to people and manually tracking status in spreadsheets.
Yeah.
They are doing that manual orchestration, trying to work out where work has got to. And clearly, we don't want to be doing that. And what we've provided with Bizagi and Tableau eliminates the need for that entirely.
It sounds to me like you've already added a lot of value to the business through the work that you and your Center of Excellence have been doing. So it kind of makes me wonder, what have you got left to do? What's next on the agenda?
I'm sure there's lots we have to do next, but yeah, I mean, just kind of recapping where we've come. So Bizagi for us provides a foundation layer. It's the foundation layer that we will integrate all other digitalization technologies into. And if I think about the benefit that Bizagi has provided so far, it's that integrity along the end-to-end process. And what Tableau and ODS provides on top of that is the ability to get much better visualization of the data to really improve process management. We have many stakeholders within the company that tend to be quite senior. They don't necessarily use Bizagi itself, but they can appreciate the value of the data being in Bizagi because they see it in the Tableau dashboards. But to answer your question, our next step is really to think about robotics. Every single step along our workflow application, we present a form to someone. And the form either contains fields that they put information into or contains fields of information that they use and put into other systems. What we want to do is develop robotic extensions to take away as much of that manual work as possible and enable our staff to be concentrating on the more value-added decisions and kind of applying judgment. And I'm really happy we've done it that way. I know plenty of other companies have begun with robotics, and it was quite possibly the right decision for them. But what we've done through our Center of Excellence is really begin the journey with process discovery and improvement. We've streamlined where possible. We've made the recommendations about appropriate roles and responsibilities. Through our automation work, we have mapped out the entire process and put that under workflow control, and then provided better process management. So robotics for us is sort of like the icing on the cake that just helps us address residual manual work that needs to be done. And beyond this, Scott, I really don't know. I mean, I suppose there are other avenues in the future. We are certainly keen to explore machine learning at some point to support decision making. I'm sure we can do more with intelligent document processing. But that's tomorrow's challenge. I mean, the way forward from this point is definitely the next chapter for us is to integrate robotics. But yeah, Scott, if you really want to know, you'll have to ask me in a year's time. Invite me back and I'll happily tell you what we're working on right now.
I look forward to that conversation when we have it.
No, very good, very good. Well, thank you very much. No, that was great fun.
And Ian, thank you so much for joining us today, for agreeing to have this chat. and for really just sharing what you've done and the difference that it's made for you. We really do appreciate it. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Scott. It's my pleasure.
Thanks.